right, everybody, Stephen Key here. Once again, I have a very special guest, but this is really amazing. I've been in the toy industry years and years ago, and there's one product that I absolutely loved. I thought was amazing. And I know if you're a little bit older, or even if you're young, it doesn't matter. This product, this toy, this plush animal was everywhere. Pound Puppies.
Those lonely Pound Puppies really need to be rescued. Pound Puppy, I'm so glad to find you. Put that lonely puppy down behind you. You need a name. I'll call you Freckles.
Lots of Pound Puppies need your love.
Oscar, meet Petey.
And when they're this lonely and this lovable, one more is always welcome.
Come sharing all our cuddling, caring puppy love.
Pound Puppies. Each sold separately. From Tonka.
Now, what's really amazing about this, I have the inventor, Mike Bowling, with us today, the inventor of Pound Puppies, and he's going to tell us exactly how he did it. Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I really, really do.
Well, this is so exciting for me. I'm going to jump in because I did a little bit of homework, and I'm very familiar with Pound Puppies because that's when my career started in the toy industry. It was the mid-1980s. And
Yes.
I was a plush designer. Who would ever want to do that? And so I knew exactly, I loved what you were doing. So, okay, Mike, tell us, what is a Pound Puppy?
You know, a Pound Puppy, when I got the idea, it was based on me going to the pound as a child and picking out pets. And I remember when I got the idea, I thought, well, if there's two things people love on this earth passionately, it's their kids and their pets. And some people treat their pets as if they're their kids who are insane over them. And I always had, a dog while I was growing up. And when it hit me, I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going to create these puppies that kids can go in and pick out and name and create the personal ownership. When you're doing things, sometimes it's a little bit later on when you realize all the details of what you did, but you didn't realize it at the start. So Pound Puppies are about a child going to the pound, picking out the pet that they wanted, bringing it home, naming it, which creates a personal ownership and a bond that was extremely unique in the marketplace at that time. Yes, Cabbage Patch was a hit, and Cabbage Patch came with names, and kids adopted them, and they came with the predetermined names and different things with them, where Pound Puppies, as I said, was unique in that it didn't have a name, and that was one of the strongest things. Tonka, who first sold Pound Puppies, put a mail back-in offer inside the box where you could name your dog and get your name on a red plastic tag, and they would send it back to you. And I think it was $3.50, and this is back in the 80s and stuff. And it exploded. It was the highest ever redemption of a toy when you add something into it. They were saying, with Barbie, to get something extra for it, it's only like, 10% of the overall sales. Where with Pound Puppies, it was up in the 30 and 40% range of kids that were sending in, and Tonka was swamped and had to keep getting larger and larger fulfillment houses to manage it. But what that says to you is how important it was to that child to name and own that. And so that was the story behind it. I put them in a box like they were from the pound.
But your box, wait, stop. Your packaging was brilliant because it was like how you carry a pet, and you went to the pound and it looked like you were taking your pet home from the pound. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. And that was the concept. I remember when I first designed the box myself. I was sitting at Wendy's restaurant. I'd gone to KB and got a poster board and a little X-Acto knife. And I sat with one of my first ever made Pound Puppies, and I set it down, figured out what size it should be, cut it out. I had it enclosed in the front with bars over it, And that was my first prototype that I got made. So the original ones are in a box where you just have to peek through the lattice work in the front to see the puppy in there, was the way I originally designed it. And then when we got into Tonka, of course, you get suggestions from marketing people, and they said, we need to open it up and show we can still do the pound in the box, but we need to put the head out in front where the kids can see it more visibly than the hidden form that I did. But actually, Irwin Toy in Canada came out with it first. They were the first company that said they loved it. They took it right on the spot, and they brought it out in the fall of 1984, and in my original packaging. Okay. And everything with the dog, and it shot up to #1 new toy in Canada the first year it was introduced.
I had read somewhere where you got rejected. You came up with Pound Puppies. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the prototyping in just a minute. But you were rejected 14 times?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Every company we would go to, and I like to tell the story because you having been in the industry, you know that rejection is the #1 thing that you get. You just keep going from the nose until you get a yes. But I tell everybody I got all the class, which I learned later on as I stayed in this business for 36 years. I got all the classic rejections. It doesn't fit into our current marketing plan. We've got something else in the plush category, so we can't look at this right now. And I got all of those types of rejections, and I even got one of those special rejections the first time in my life. I'm sure you remember the toy company Ideal when it in business, and I'm not going to name any names of people, but I met with the president of Ideal at that time and made my presentation to him. And when I got done, he said, "That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. It looks like it's squatting to pee." And he got up and walked out on me. And I just packed my puppies up and went on to the next one, and the next one, and then we became #1 in the world.
No, wait. Okay, so rejection is part of the game.
Yes.
It's probably not easy to take, and probably when he said that to you at the time, probably kind of hurt. It's funny now looking back, and you tell this story because you were eventually very successful. But how did you get past the rejection? How did you keep moving forward?
You know what? When I came up with the idea, I remember the day I did, I was, in my car and I was slamming my fist on the steering wheel saying, "This is it, this is it." I was a factory worker at Ford and had been for, I think at that point for 17 years. And I worked there to take care of my wife and kids and stuff, but I did not enjoy working in a hot, loud, oily factory. And my brain constantly thought of ways. So when I got the idea, I said, "This is it." And I was just so convinced that this was my opportunity to get out of the factory and do something that I enjoy every day of my life, which is the creative process in creating this. And I wouldn't allow any rejection to get in my way. And I just kept going on and on. I finally had to make a decision. Ford, great company to work for. They were really great to me. But you're only allowed 90 days leave of absence. And I had used up my 90 days leave of absence. And Ford called me into the office and they said, "Mike, we love you. You're a great employee, but you don't do us any good when you're not here. So we can't give you any more time off. Okay. And so you have to make a choice. It's us or the puppies." And of course, I'm chasing it at that time, and it's not licensed or a success or anything at that point in time. And I was faced with a critical decision, and I still do. My youngest daughter has cerebral palsy, and I had another daughter, and the medical benefits were great for me. But I made the choice, and I quit. And so there was no option for me other than the success of it. I took away the option of just settling back into working in the factory. And I guess that was it for me. It's just the commitment and the belief in it. And I didn't know how to do anything I was going to do. I'd never been in the toy industry, but I knew that I could figure out how to do anything else. I even had this idea, well, if it does, no toy companies take it, I'm going to start making handmade ones and sell them, like Cabbage Patch was, and numbering and signing them and putting them out that way. But I just, I think of myself as that little tiny car that we had when we were young, where you pull it back and let it go and it runs across the floor and it hits the wall and flips over and keeps on going. And that's the way I envisioned myself, just, hitting the walls. And trust me, I hit a lot of walls during the process of finding somebody, even after finding somebody, as you're well aware of, the troubles that you have in licensing and marketing within companies and stuff. And so, but I was just, I don't know, I was determined that this was my opportunity and I was going to take it.
You know what's interesting? People always ask me, how do I know, when should I give up? And sometimes I'll tell everybody, well, don't quit your day job quite yet. But then again, looking back on my career, I did my best work when my back was up against the wall.
That's great.
There was no plan B. So it's interesting that you said that. So thank you very much. So let's talk about, people are always asking me, you're new to the industry. How do you get to 14 companies? I mean, did you go to a trade show? Did you visit them? I mean, how did you do that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the things that I've learned about getting into a business that you know nothing about and you know no one in, that you can, through networking, what happened to me was through networking, I developed the Pound Puppies. I was selling some handmade ones and trying to find a home for them. And this local newspaper reporter, a small town newspaper, she thought it would be a cute story at Christmas time, factory worker trying to invent a toy, and she ran a little story on it in the local paper and everything. And this is how fate works for you. She went to her family doctor for an appointment, and she mentions to her family doctor, oh, I saw this great toy this guy has invented and that he's going out and trying to find a home for. And the doctor she was with happened to be a friend of a guy by the name of Bob Steiner. And I'm sure you know the Steiner family, Kenner Toy out of Cincinnati, and I was living in the Cincinnati area. And he said, Bob's a consultant in the toy industry. You ought to you ought to have him get in touch with Bob Steiner and do that. So she called me back. She said, here's this number. He thinks you should call this guy. And I contacted Bob. He was in Washington, D.C., working for the Federal Trade Commission. They had sold Kenner Toy, their family had. His father and uncle started it. But Bob was in Washington, D.C. I made an appointment to see him. I was living in the Cincinnati area at the time. But if I drove to Columbus, I could get a flight for $25 on People Express to Washington, D.C. So I drove to Columbus, Ohio, got on the plane, flew in, met with Bob, made my pitch to him. Luckily, he loved the Pound Puppies, and Bob became my consultant / agent. And, I have people, and I want to make this point now. I have people tell me, well, you were lucky, meeting Bob. And I don't agree with that from one standpoint. Had I not gone through the exercise of developing it, pursuing it, making the samples, putting the samples out, there would have never been a newspaper story. There would have never been an opportunity to meet Bob Steiner. So you have to get to that point. And of course, through networking and talking to people, somebody's going to say, well, you need to talk to this guy or that guy. And I was just a factory worker. I don't have a college education, but I knew how to put things together. No, what I meant to say was, I know that there are people that can do the things that I need done out there, whether it's a lawyer, which was the first person I ever went to with my idea, intellectual property attorney. And he started me off, with one line that ended up being the greatest thing that he told me. I met with him and I told him about my idea. None were created at that time. I said, I got this great idea. I'm going to make these dogs. I'm going to put them in a box. I'm going to call them Pound Puppies. Kids are going to adopt them. And he looked across the table at me and he says, you can't own an idea. And I stopped and he says, you can own copyrights, trademarks, and patents, but you can't own an idea. So you have to create it, and then we'll be able to file for the different things for you. And once you've got the protection, then you can go out and it belongs to you and you can offer it to people, And I didn't know the difference between licensing and selling it or any of those components, but, Bob Steiner helped me through.
Okay. So getting to those companies, you found somebody, you had to do a lot of work, but you found the right guy that had connections, knew people that got out in front. Let's talk about that first time you pitched to him. Did you know how to pitch? And what was your pitch? Did you say, hey, this is a plush animal for boys and girls that you could adopt? How was the pitch? Do you remember that at all?
Yes, I do, because if you realize that when you come up with an idea, which I know you do, it goes from your head to your heart and your own inner belief that comes with that. And so I went in and sat down and pitched Bob the same way that I pitched it to all those companies later on, based on my love and growing up. We weren't poor, but we were lower middle class. And where did you go when you were growing up? You went to the pound to get a dog. And I just told the story to him of what Pound Puppies was about. And it was that kids could go to the store and pick out their own pet. They could name it because it had an identity without having a name. It was a Pound Puppy. So once they named it, it created that personal ownership to the kid.
How did you feel from getting those rejections to this thing just caught on? I mean, were you giving yourself a high five, or did you tell yourself, I knew I could do it? And how did you feel?
I couldn't believe everything that was happening, because when you go from working in a factory and a good night out is, McDonald's in a movie, with your wife and kids, to this success that shot up like a rocket, it was like I was pinching myself every day. And I want to tell you something. 36 years later, I still pinch myself every day, and am in such awe of the success that I've enjoyed that it's just, it's a phenomenal feeling. And I tell everybody, they always say, well, why did you do it? Why did you quit Ford? Why did you do all these things that you did and everything with it? Of course, I believed in it. But my goal, and I had cut it out and put it on my desk. And I'm bad. Well, I mean, I'm really good for doing that. I've got notes all over my desk and on the wall and everything else constantly when I see something that I like, a phrase or something. And one of the things that I cut out and had on my desk before Pound Puppies was ever licensed or anything, it said, if I can be given a living in doing something that I enjoy every day, then that in itself is wealth. And it hit me so hard because, as I said, Ford was a great company to work for, but I really didn't like what I was doing. And as I understand it, a lot of people don't really like what they do on a daily basis. But this gave me that opportunity to do that. And I've loved I still love it to today. And in spite of all the business problems that you have and the stresses and the things that go with it, I still wake up every morning happy that I get to do the things I do. And I love the creative process. I've probably licensed 25 or 30 other items, around the world since then. Pound Puppies was number one. None of the other items hit that level. They were successful, like you had a double or a triple or something like that, but not the home run. But so I'm still in that
Okay.
process of creatively coming up with ideas.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. My father told me when I was, I think, 19. He said, "Look, if you find something you truly love to do, you'll never work a day in your life."
Yeah.
And I jumped off that cliff like you did. So I'm really glad you said that, because it was never about. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the success. It was about doing something you truly loved, and the success will follow, I think, if you stay with it. So.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you something a lot of people don't understand. I even have had a company executive, the president of Baloob at the time, when Pound Puppies was with Baloob. He said to me, "You know, Mike, I don't understand you." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "The majority of the time I'm arguing with, the licensor." And he said, "It's not that way with you." And I said, "Well, here's how I approach things. I approach it that, number one, the concept has to succeed, because if it doesn't, number two and number three get nothing. Number two, I work that my partner succeeds. So anything that I can do to help him succeed, I know he's going to put more into it and work harder. And then I don't worry about number three, because I'll tell you, if 1 and 2 work, number 3 is going to be happy." And that's the way I always approach, and I have since the day I started. And I value my business relationships more than I do money or any of those things. I value, I've been blessed in that back when I started Pound Puppies, most companies at that time didn't have international operations, toy companies. They had different companies within those countries that sold their products for them. Like Kenner, the reason we ended up in Irwin Toy is that Kenner sold all their toys through Irwin, so Bob knew them really well, the Kenner products in Canada. And we ran around the world and licensed it in 28 separate countries that covered 52 different countries, because some of the licensees had multiple territories that were theirs. But I established relationships with people in the toy industry around the world, and the majority of all of those companies at that time were family-started businesses throughout Europe, where the families their grandfathers had started the toy companies, and they now had them. So I had a network, and you know what? I still to today can call Jorgen's store from Schmidtspiel, 36 years later. Of course, he's getting old like me too. But
well, I want to talk about this.